You're listening to the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast, where we empower women of faith to identify, acknowledge, and accept their doubts and limits and beliefs in order to give birth to their God-given purpose. Join me and sometimes some of my friends on our journey as we remind you that you are not alone. I'm Felicia Wallace, and together we will find our fears and slay them. Welcome back to another episode of the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast. I am here with Ms. Keturah Rosato. She is the CEO of the Social Recharge LLC. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited and really grateful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that you agreed to be on the show. I'm excited about this conversation. So before we get started into talking about the social recharge and everything that you do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started?
Yeah, sure. So on a professional level, my background is in mental health and counseling.
Okay.
And back in 2017, I myself was going through some personal changes. A lot of changes that happened in my life within 2013 to 2016, 2017. And during that process, there was a lot of inner work that God was doing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, quite a bit of personal development as well. And so as I was going through these transitions and seeing a lot of growth, exponential growth happening in my life, what I started doing was, after looking inward, I started looking outward and seeing that, there are so many women who were dealing with some of the same challenges that I was dealing with. And having gone through my own personal journey and seeing how uplifting and enlightening it was for me, I decided that, it is time for me to turn my focus around, to devote my full attention to helping these women who are perhaps wrestling with alignment, or who are lacking systems, processes, and, just overall execution guidance to nourish their souls and to make the shifts that would really create that beautiful life from the inside out for them. So that was overall what that journey was for me.
Oh, nice. So as soon as you said it, I was like, 2017 was my transformational year too, because that was the year Slaying Self-Doubt was basically birthed out of, well, it's from God, but absolutely nothing. It just was an idea. And here we are, 2020. And so that is very interesting how we go through our own personal journey and we realize that what we're going through can also help others. And so hence the name Slaying Self-Doubt. That's my thing, right? That is something that is a part of me, is my journey. And so I'm like, I can't be the only person. And taking that energy that I did with myself to try to just not necessarily make it go away, but to be able to deal with it, understand it, and have the self-awareness was like, okay, how can I now put this back out there so other women can do the same thing and slay their own self-doubt? So, we're like twinsies.
Yes, we are. Yes, there's a lot of alignment there. I can already tell.
So how has self-doubt showed up in your journey?
Oh my. Oh God. I would have to take it way, way back, but if time permits, I could just share from my childhood, really.
Okay.
And it stems all the way back to childhood for me. I was a very bright little girl, always the kid who knew everything, who was always busy wowing my mom and dad with all the information that I learned, right? And, as a kid, sometimes your parent will say, oh, you know what? You're so smart. You're going to be a this. You're going to be a that. Right?
Yeah.
But the circumstances around my life, right? My ecosystem, it didn't really nourish that person that I could have been or should have been or wanted to be. And I want to preface it by saying I'm not blaming. I'm not looking back to blame, but I'm just really sharing that foundational piece to really help the listeners see, okay, well, here's what showed up for you.
Yeah.
In my home, my mom was the best mom that she could have been.
Yeah.
She loved her children. She took us to church every Sunday. Like, my life was home church. Okay.
It's a lot of us who understand that.
Yeah, it was home and church. And if I wasn't at school, it was something happening at the church.
Yeah.
And the church became a really central location for us.
Mm.
But outside of church, there was a lot of turmoil in our lives that had, unfortunately, a lot to do with the conflict between my mom and dad. And it got to the point where domestic violence became a part of it.
Wow.
And so the thing is, my mom would tell me, okay, here's the reality of life. You can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want to do. But then I saw her get beat up by my father every now and then.
Yeah.
And so, you had these mixed messages being sent out. And as a child, I filtered these things how best I could. And aside from that, there were so many other things in my neighborhood that I saw, that I witnessed on a daily basis. And for the most part, I said to myself, well, the best you can do is not get pregnant as a teenager. Like that was my idea of a good life, that I didn't get pregnant as a teenager. When I left my home, I was 16 years old, and it was after an unfortunate set of physical altercations between my dad and me. And again, there was a lot of physical violence involved. And at the time, I was just focused on getting out. My mom made a way for me. I didn't grow up in America. I came here when I was 16 years old. And after a very, very violent beating from my dad, she just made a way for me to get here, as just get here in one piece. But a lot of that, I never gave myself the time, the space, the opportunity to dig through these things and work through what the aftermath of all of that would look like for me, And the other thing too is that I'm in my 30s. The time that I was growing up, people didn't really focus so much on therapy or going to see somebody. It was more, people who have mental health issues, or they're almost on the crazy end, that's who goes to see a shrink. And those things on wellness and personal growth, I didn't have a concept of that. And so for me, it was just, number one, don't get pregnant. That was the one thing. But then I got married very young. I was 19 years old when I got married the first time. And my 3 criteria for a good man were, I hope he doesn't beat me, I hope he doesn't cheat on me, and I hope he takes care of me.
Wow.
That was it. So all of these things, and I don't want to jump too far ahead just yet, but all of these things were factors that contributed to how I saw myself. And how I presented myself to the world. I lived from more of a survival type perspective. And so it was just about, let me just get through. And so all of the other things like dreaming, pursuing, aiming high, that was like so far from my purview, So that's kind of like the beginning stages.
No, but I think that's so key. Like I know, now, first of all, thank you for sharing that with us. I'm always, I say this all the time, is that we don't know what people go through. We don't know what their story is. And that's what this platform is for, to be able to, kind of to share that, and for people to realize that if they're in that situation, that there is another way, or if they were in that situation and they didn't think that they could get out, that there's somebody else who's also been through what you've been through. But I also think that looking behind you is the only way you can move forward, right? And making peace with it, not like staying back there and like you said, blaming at first, or like making that the reason why. But I think really like going in your past and really recognizing like what happened before that makes me show up like this. What is it about whatever it is I went through, good, bad, or indifferent, that causes me to show up and not my true authentic self, or to like shy away from the things that I want to be able to do, like dreaming and all of those things. Those are the things you tell your kids, right? Like we tell them like, what do you want to do? Think about it. And if for us as adults, sometimes it's very hard for us to hear them say that, like sometimes some of the stuff that they say they want to do, it's like, what, you want to wear cape, fly in the air, and also build a building, but with your, one hand is a saw, the other hand is a shovel. Like, what in the world, but it's how they see it, right? In their imagination. And, sometimes our life circumstances kind of cuts that short, right? And just hearing your story, you said it, but it made me think like, yeah, you were in survival mode because you're trying to survive through that situation. And then the transition into a whole nother country, you got to survive in a whole nother place too. Right. And so, yeah, like that's, yeah. Wow. So so if that was your past, like how did that show up in your adult life? Like once you kind of recognize that, okay, these are the things I went through. When did it, I don't want to say,
click?
Yeah. When did it click for you that you was like, girl, what?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So
listen,
okay.
I apologize in advance, but this is just how the show goes.
No, this is good. This is good. I'm just trying to, in my head, condense age 19 through 32, because things really started shifting for me around the age of 32.
Okay.
So I got married. Right after getting married, baby number 1 comes, baby
Mm-hmm.
number 2 comes, baby number 3 comes. So now I got 3 little babies on my hands and all these dreams that seem like they're about to be deferred to God knows where.
Mm-hmm.
But my drive to complete school, to finish college, that was something that there was nothing that was taking that away from me.
Okay.
And so I did finish. It took me 7 years to get a 4-year degree, but I did it.
That's not right. You finished.
Yes, definitely. But one of the things that started shifting for me is that was that when I stepped into the professional space and I started asserting myself within, I became a high school teacher, and when you're giving of yourself, it's very natural for me, like to be a helping heart, a helping soul. But when I started to share with these young students, many of them who would look at me as if I was the exception to the rule, and I would say, no, like this can be you too. Like there's absolutely nothing stopping you. I started looking inward and I started looking at myself like, whoa, what are some things that you've said to yourself that you cannot do because of some circumstance around you? Because they say when you teach it, you learn it twice.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so that was like the first catalyst for me. But then there were also other issues that I had not even addressed in my marriage. And so after 10 years, my marriage, which was standing on some very, very skinny foundations, it started falling apart. And when it fell apart really, really fast.
Wow.
So now you have my marriage fell apart. Then prior to my marriage falling apart, my husband at the time and we moved from Florida to New Jersey. So another major
shift. Yeah, that is the
the
change of location. People trying to get to Florida.
I know, right? And we went in the opposite.
Right.
We went in the opposite direction, and it was partially because I had family in New Jersey, and it had gotten to the point where we knew we needed more support.
Okay.
But by the time we reached out for that support, the marriage itself was already at a place where anything would have tipped the scale in the wrong direction. And that's unfortunately what happened. So marriage ends. We're in a new location. I become a single mom of 4. Within that time frame, I had become homeless, jobless, and husbandless. Okay.
Wow.
And I don't say it to make myself look like, oh my God, wow, pity story, because I too had a lot of other internal demons that I was battling with. And so throughout that time, I went through what I call a YOLO spree. Okay. And you can
I can guess what that looked like.
Okay. So
my goodness.
And that YOLO spree had like me in this vortex that I did not know how to get out of it.
Wow.
Until on the outside, it was looking good. I had just gotten a corporate job, and everything was looking fine. I had made a name for myself, but my life was falling apart, completely falling apart. And so where the self-doubt showed up for me was specifically in my value, my internal value of myself.
Wow.
I did not believe that I deserved to be with someone who adored me and loved me and just threw the red carpet out for me and put everything else on it for me to walk on. I didn't believe that. And so I met my husband. We got married 8 weeks after we met.
Oh, wow.
which is another story. It was another story in and of itself. But 5 months into that marriage, things got rocky, and it all had to do with how I saw myself.
Wow.
And there were some not so pretty things that happened within that space of 5 months that I gave my husband the option to leave. And he said to me 8 words that completely changed everything. He said, "Why would I do that? You're my wife."
Wow.
And it was as if something clicked in a way that I cannot explain it, in short
In
detail.
words. Yeah.
But it sent me on this journey, because then I started asking myself, well, who are you? And who is the woman that he sees that you don't even see?
Yeah.
And what do you need to do to become
what he see? Yeah.
To become that woman who feels worthy of the words, "Why would I do that? You're my wife." And that's really that space of time right there between 2015 to 2017. God was dealing with me. And whether it was through inner healing or personal development or me learning about myself, and not just learning, but being brave enough to open doors that I had shut away for years. That's what began to change things, And I always say it takes a lot of courage, but when a woman becomes grounded and secure in her uncompromised identity, she has the power. She becomes unstoppable, and she can really curate the life that she can begin to celebrate both inwardly and outwardly. And that's really what happened for me. I began to identify what that uncompromised identity looks like, for a child of God.
Yeah, look, I'm over here just like listening and mesmerizing. Of course I can see you. So I'm just like, but I think one of the biggest things is that, something that I believe that every woman, at one time or another deals with is feeling worthy, right? Worthy of whatever it is that God says he has for us, because ultimately he has a plan for us. He knows exactly what he wants to give us, who he wants to send us our way. And a lot of times the things that we've been through or how we've, constructed in our head what we are, or what he, not, it ain't what he said, but it's how what we heard him say, which is not exactly right. We deal with this worthiness and whether or not we're deserving of all that he wants to be able to give us. And that is it's a difficult place to be at once you realize that you didn't think you were worthy, right? Because now you're not only is it, it's hard for you to try to convince yourself, but for somebody else to try to convince you too is even more difficult, right? Because you're just like, oh, you don't know the real me. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've done. You don't know the things that I've thought or said or whatever have you. And I think a lot of times that, we definitely don't give ourselves enough grace to understand that, like, we all go through something. We all have a past. We all have something that, we didn't necessarily ask to happen, but it's all to grow us to become exactly what he wants us to be and where he wants us to go. And so again, I thank you for sharing your story, because I saw your face at first was kind of like, like you said, how am I get it all down?
How am I going to condense all of this?
You got it. But it definitely boiled down to, and I can see how your past, right, all the way up to that moment when he said that, because what you had seen and what you had been through made you feel like that you weren't deserving of that. And so to be able to change that mindset, that would change how you feel about yourself. It changes how you see other people, how you see your kids, how you see your husband. It does something in you where you're like, no, I am worthy of this. And I don't have to take no for an answer. I can say no to things that don't serve me. I can say no to people that I don't need you to, I'm good with or without you. Right.
Okay.
And I think that it's about doing the self-reflection and being willing to take that journey to be able to say, okay, who am I outside of everybody else? Not my titles, not as a wife, not as a mom, not as a corporate, person, not as a therapist. Who am I outside of that? So that is awesome. What have you learned about yourself during this journey that you didn't know before?
Oh, that I didn't know. I think for many, many years, one of the things I aspired to, and you briefly touched on it just a moment ago, was that I thought that when I had a certain title behind my name
Mm-hmm.
or accomplished something academically or professionally, then I would feel a certain way. Then I would feel, or then I would be like, yeah, I would be all of these different things.
Accomplished. Yeah.
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 And the accomplishments, they meant absolutely nothing for me. I, when I got the job that I wanted, okay, I had the job, but I was completely devoid
Yeah.
emotionally and
Yeah.
spiritually of everything that I needed. Even when I went back to school to get my master's degree, it was more of, I think it was more of a journey, a personal journey for me, and not even
Mm-hmm.
about the, not even about getting
Got
the
your
thing
degree.
itself. Yeah, because I don't even work in that field anymore. Right. Right.
Oh God.
And I remember my husband, he would say, are you sure you want to go back to school and owe Uncle Sam all that money? Because I went from owing the government 30 grand to 150 grand.
Sheesh. Sheesh.
Right. And this is not to say that people cannot approach academics or any of that, but
Yeah.
it's about knowing why you're doing something. And that's what I discovered. Like,
Yeah.
Keturah, what is your motivation for everything that you do? Because then if your motivation is, I'm gonna do all this stuff
Yeah.
so that I can be this thing over there, then you've already lost the battle.
Yeah.
And what I've really learned in a nutshell is you have to be that thing first. You
Yeah.
really have to be it so that you can know, okay, what steps do I need to take? The same way when my husband said, you are my wife.
Yeah.
So I had to be that woman.
Yeah.
And this is true for so many other areas of our lives. And I'm just using this example of myself because it's the most pertinent one right now. But I had to be that person so
Mm-hmm.
that I could know, okay, what are the steps I need to take? To what do I need to do so that I can have the kind of intimacy with him
Yeah.
that he already sees and is
Yeah.
ready to offer to me. And it's the same for any other thing where we're doubting ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
where we're thinking, well, I'm not worthy, or I shouldn't this, or I shouldn't that, or we know, like, our heart cry, it's screaming out to us, right? Because
Yeah.
then God places things in our heart. He places seeds that all we have to do is take action so that it
Yes.
proliferate.
Yeah.
And we know it, we feel the pull, but then we decide based on and for me, a lot of it was, I have a friend who puts it this way. She said, I expired my loyalty
Mm.
to the things that were not serving me.
Whew.
Right, right, right.
Man, that gave me goosebumps. Yes.
She's one of my good friends, but she says it that way. I expired the loyalty to what was not serving me. And some of the
Yeah.
things that were not serving me really were a lot of these cultural agreements that I made.
Mm.
If I look back at my family, you see brokenness, you see this, you see that.
Yeah.
And even if you want it, you desire the opposite of that. You want the antithesis of that, but it's like, well, deep down inside, what you believe is really what's going to dominate the decision
Yeah.
you make.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that I go into with that, especially working with clients, because that belief piece,
Yeah.
those core beliefs that we that we hold on to, my God, but yeah, overall understanding for myself, like, okay, what do you need to be so that you can, and not the other way around.
Now, what do you need to have? It's so interesting that when you were talking about getting your MBA and like not really like you just got it, kind of got it, a get it situation. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying how, they were having a moment with God and there was something that they wanted, but the question, the response they got back from him was very much so like, do you really want this, or is this just a check mark? And it was a thing to say, like, how many things have we check marked, right? It doesn't serve us in the way that we can, because the purpose of the things that we do that God gives us is so that he gives it to us so that we give it back out, right? Yeah. But there's things that we go and we get and we check mark to say, oh, I made it. Oh, I did it. Oh, I accomplished this. So now we can say, oh, okay, I got this. I made this job. I made this amount of money. I have this house. I have this car. But how does that serve exactly what your purpose is, right? And so, especially I would say that I know that you do women empowerment, and that's also, something that I do specifically with people's purpose, because before you reach your purpose, a lot of times you're checking off boxes. Like you're just saying like, oh, I need to do this. And for me, I remember in my journey, as a leader, it was kind of like, well, why don't you want to move up? Why don't you want to do this? And it was at one point in time, that was what I was striving for. And at some point, God took that desire away. And I was just kind of like, I don't want to do this, but I also don't want to move up. I was very clear about that. And it took a minute for him to be able to take those superficial goals, so to speak, away from me, to be able to see that okay, yeah, you could become an AVP, you could become all these things for somebody else if you like. However, what if you tried it my way? And what he did with me, it made me, I wanted to do that more and more and more than I wanted to do my actual job. And then I was able to transition and be able to walk away and say, I'm good. Like, that was great. It served what it needed to serve for that moment. I got the experience, that part of my life is complete, but now I'm ready to walk into exactly what it is that God wants me to do. And it's scary. Child, it's not an easy thing, because ain't no rules. There's no manual. Ain't no training. Like it's nothing.
But that's the beautiful part about trusting God, right? Trusting that he has already provided. My favorite scripture is, his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness, right?
Yeah.
And the scripture goes on more to speak. But I love that, because then we know it up here, but it's like, how do we take the knowledge up here and turn it to power in our hearts, right? And if you would permit me, as I ask that question, I actually have an acronym that I usually share, when I'm speaking. I say that power, it starts with the posture, really the posture of our heart. And I'll just kind of go over it in like as quickly as I can. But it's posture of heart, ownership, because a lot of times we don't want to own certain things, right?
I can guarantee you, everybody stopped right there. It was like, I don't want to hear nothing else. I can't go no further than ownership. Okay, that's a difficult thing.
Yeah, but what I always say to my clients is, don't worry about the ownership so much. Don't get tripped up on the ownership, because it's only when you own it that you can overcome it. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, then you're like, okay.
Okay, I don't have to do it today. All right.
Right. And it gives a different sense of power or even energy around that ownership, because the ownership is not really about accepting guilt or accepting blame or anything like that. But that ownership is a stepping stone into the thing that you actually want to overcome. Then we really take a look at our sense of worth, right? And the E is for empathy. Really, and empathy is just my pretty word for forgiveness.
Yeah. That's a whole nother, that is not a good F word. Okay. No one likes it.
right?
Listen, I had a whole year with forgiveness. Me and forgiveness was looking at each other eye to eye,
Like,
like
what?
who gonna go first?
I totally hear you, sis. I get it. I get it. But that empathy, when we begin to empathize and we begin to sit ourselves in another person's seat,
Yeah.
to not make excuses for them, not to give them a pass and say okay and accept. No, it's
Yeah.
not about that. But that empathy then begins to make sure that our heart is always in a healed space. And
Yeah.
then finally, you can always renew the mind,
Renew. Yeah.
always renew the mind, so it's posture of heart, ownership, worth, empathy, and renewal of the mind. And those are five frameworks that I use, really, because it encompasses so much. It's not just about the personal development or the airy fairy stuff.
Yeah.
It takes you deep, deep,
Yeah.
deep. And there is no way to bypass, like, what I say, the issues within the tissues
Yeah.
when you go.
You got to dig deep. You got to
Yeah.
and you got to be willing to do the work. So
Yeah.
and since we already there in the power, right? So tell us about Social Recharge and what it is that you do and how you've taken all of your life lessons to be able to serve others.
Yeah. So the Social Recharge, it was actually a phrase that I wrote as I was journaling and asking
Mm,
God, like, what's happening with me? And I wrote
wow.
down, this is my social recharge, right? And so that's where we started. It started with me simply just doing workshops with ladies at
Mm-hmm.
conferences. Lots of them were more faith-based, in religious settings,
Mm-hmm.
but it has branched out to more secular groups where people are just like, hey, I want to figure out how to uh, you know, get through the major life decisions that I'm dealing
Yeah.
with. And I shared with you some major life decisions for myself. There was divorce, there was remarriage, there was even with my remarriage, my husband's first wife, she passed away, and that's
Oh,
how their marriage ended. So I inherited a son,
yeah.
but it wasn't just I'm a stepmom. I became his
His
mom.
mom.
Like, that
Right.
was it.
Yeah.
It was just me. And so there are a lot of major life decisions that we need to make. And what I find is that our women, some of the areas where they're experiencing the biggest challenges is in are in having the systems
Mm,
and the execution guidance that they need in mindset
mm-hmm.
and just mental resilience. So that's really what the Social Recharge is focused on. I What I've noticed happening, though, is that the Social Recharge, men have been somehow sneaking in there through the back door.
Because they need help too, whether they admit it or not.
So men have been sneaking into the back door. And the other thing is that there are so many other bigger issues,
Mm-hmm.
social issues, that
Mm-hmm.
people are dealing with, and they want to know, okay, how do I think through this situation? How do I
Yeah.
structure myself? And so the Social Recharge has actually widened its span, but
Mm.
my heart is still to work with women.
Yeah.
And so what I've had to do is to allow the Social Recharge to flourish how it's been flourishing and grow the way it's been happening, because the Social Recharge was never mine. It was
Yeah.
God's,
Yeah.
it
I
was
know that. I know all about that, sis.
it was never mine. And so I can't tell it, oh, no, 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 you're gonna be this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the beautiful thing that's happened is now Social Recharge has become the parent company, and underneath that we have Momentum Woman, which,
Ah.
yeah, which is the direction that Keturah is going, to
Yeah.
really, really focus on those pieces for women, because I believe that women, there's a lot about us. We
Mm-hmm.
are like these very deep and beautiful and complex creatures, and we have so much potential, and
Yeah.
sometimes we need that space that is just ours.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, yeah. And so as the Social Recharge grows, she has produced Momentum Woman, which
Yeah.
is really, really where I take all my work with women,
Mm.
and we explore, the magnificence that's there for us, the essence and all of the things that allow a woman to be fully complete. And I, because of my background in mental health and in training, I focus specifically on mindset work
Okay.
for our women. And I'm watching the Social Recharge just do her thing.
But because it's exactly what you said, it's not yours, right?
It's
And
not.
so it definitely it resonates with me, because that slaying self-doubt isn't mine. Did not come from me. It wasn't anything I wanted it to do. So when these things kind of shift, and I told you prior to us talking that at first it was, doing the interview, at first it was supposed to be, just me sharing my story and then, God was like, okay, I need you to go this way. And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. Who am I going to get? Do people even want to share? And I just, in this month alone, I've been so just like blessed to be able to see how he's shifting, right? And I'm getting more people who are like, okay, this is it's like a safe space, right? For people to come and be able to share their stories and also share what it is that they're doing as well. But I'm able to, what I'm receiving from it is, it's very interesting, because the show is about, slaying self-doubt, and I'm able to talk with so many women who are proof that it's possible, right? And so for me, it's an encouragement to like keep going, because I'm hearing all these stories and I'm like, yes, I want a little bit of that, and I want some of that, and this is what's keeping me going. And so you got to let it go, right? You got to let wherever God wants it to go, it's going to touch whoever it needs to touch and go in the direction that he needs it to go. And I think that's a key to our obedience, right? Like, in order for us to be able to truly get what it is that he's promised us, right, is that we just have to follow whatever it is that he says, and know that, like you said, taking what we know in our mind and putting it into action, right? Because we know that he says all things happen for his good. We know that he says that he has a plan for us. And then our brains, or our heart, well, mostly our brains, because our hearts know. I think it's our brains that are like, but does he? I've read that. It does sounds good, but can I really see that? And like you said, it's that faith walk. And when you're able to look back and be like, man, like, this is not where this was supposed to be, or I didn't think it was, but this is it. Like you said, somewhere men are creeping in the back door, because for him, it's about everybody. It's bigger than you, right? Yeah. But then he said, okay, you want your women, go ahead.
And it's so beautiful that the opportunity to still nurture my women piece, right? That piece that's really, really important for me. It's so beautiful that I'm still able to do that while allowing it to expand and grow deeper in the ways that God is creating. And so, Social Recharge on its own, it's really a global mindset movement. For women and men, apparently, it's for women and men. So, whether it's on the podcast that they're listening, so that they can get the tips from people who have overcome some of these same challenges, right? The testimonials, the triumphant stories, so that they can take it and apply it to their lives. And also, I've been noticing there's a great move to social awareness that's coming in, which again is still grounded in the faith in Jesus Christ, grounded in that identity, because our worldviews today have shifted so much.
Absolutely.
Many of our worldviews have shifted, but although the Social Recharge is not a faith movement, it's rooted in faith. So that's one of the things I endeavor to always bring to people. And just so that your listeners know, I did with the Momentum Woman, I started where we were doing challenges, like 4-day challenges, and then it kind of funnels them into other personal growth and other opportunities for personal development. But Momentum Woman, she is that woman who is really ready to lead, to lead herself in the areas where God has already commissioned her to, so that she can lead other women, and so that as she rises, that she causes other women to rise with her. And that's really, really important to me, because then when it happened in my personal life,
Yep.
I saw how it had a ripple effect on other people.
On other people, yeah. That's awesome. So with the Momentum Woman, is that something anybody can join, or is there like a certain criteria, or, you know, I be wanting all the details.
Well, I have a free Facebook group that Momentum Women can join. There is a paid version, which is Momentum Women Elite.
Okay.
But if you want to join the free version, all you have to do is just go to momentumwoman.com, and it will direct you to how to join on Facebook. And here we're giving weekly high vibe content and context to help our women really not just overcome. I don't want to just say overcome, but become unstoppable in business, relationship, and in life. So they can join. It's momentumwoman.com, and they can find out how to join me there.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Keturah. This was such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. I can already tell, you said it earlier, like there's an alliance. I can already tell, like, you about to be my sis for real. Okay. So,
I love it.
There have been times where God has just placed people in my life that I'm just like, okay, like you need this person, and you just never know how they are going to show up. And I'm always praying for the right connections, right? Because doing certain things on your own, when, like you said, when you don't really have a team, it's just you're not, you're not sure, right? And so you want to make sure, and I give that all to him. If he say no, I'll be like, sorry, gotta swerve that one real quick. No, right? That's not gonna work. This is a one-time thing. Okay. But I also know when he's like, this is for you. So I could definitely tell. I already know. It might be the locks. I think that's what it is.
You know what? It's probably the locks.
That's a commitment right there. See,
it sure is. Ay.
So how can people connect with you? You told us about the Momentum group, the momentumwomen.com. How else can people get connected with you? I'm going to put all the information in the show notes, but definitely if people want to just hop on either to listen to the podcast, just to reach out to you, maybe do you do any one-on-one coaching, anything like that?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. So I made it very easy for everybody. So if you want to find me on social media, just at Keturah Rosato, one word, KETURAH ROSATO. So if you look for me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram, you will find me at that handle. Okay. And on my Instagram handle, if you just click on my profile, I have a link to all of the platforms for the podcast. So whether you're listening on Apple, Stitcher, what else is there? Spotify, Google, you name it. Yeah, everything. Yeah. Everything, right? It's right. It's right there. And there's also a link to do a free consultation with me. And I call it the Bold Power Strategy Session. It's 45 minutes and it's free, just to really give people an opportunity to interact with me through the work that I do, and to come away with solution-focused approaches that they could say, whoa, here we go. I can apply this to my life today, even if I never choose to invest to work with Keturah. But that's just my gift, because I know that there was a time in my life where I just needed to know what next steps do I need to take. And we kind of go through that power dynamic that I gave, but we go in a little more detail so that people can say, okay, and they can make a decision whether they want to continue working or not. But I try to give value, because freely you have received, so freely you must give.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I truly, truly appreciate it. Like I already said, this ain't the last thing you've seen of this face.
That I know for sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's really, really been a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. We end every episode with the serenity prayer, and it goes as follows. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, y'all, that's all for this week. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review. Remember to head over to Facebook and Instagram and follow me at Slaying Self-Doubt. Oh, wait, don't forget, go to my YouTube channel and watch this episode. And remember to press the subscribe button. Until next week, see ya.